Hello classmates, so welcome back, and today I'll be making Final from the anime 86. And since I didn't do the design this time, I will leave the thingverse number for you guys to print as well. So with that said, let's get to the actual review. So this anime came out like a while ago. I think it was in 2021, if I remember. And I don't know why I slept on this one. I am a really big fan of military anime, so I don't know why I slept on this one. So I decided to watch it about a month ago, and I will say I regret it. I should have watched it when it was airing because I was really surprised by the quality in animation, and I think the storytelling was extremely good too. The pace of the show didn't feel dragged on, and it really deserves everyone's attention. If you like mecha and if you like military animes in general, I think you really will like this one. And I think if you compare to other animes that I even review in this channel, I think the one that I will compare in emotional and impactful ways was Violet Evergarden, because the impact of the characters and their emotion was nice. It was not even nice, it was absolutely fantastical. And you can expect not like a bad animation or heavy use of CGI, because this one was made by A1 Pictures, so it is a really good anime adaptation. And I would say a complaint that I see a lot in mecha anime is the heavy use of CGI, and I will not lie, this one use a little bit of CGI, especially in the mecha scenes, but one thing that really catch my attention was they don't pop out like weird, like you draw a scenario and you just plug it or you just drop it a mecha in there. No, they really blend very well with the scenario, so that's really nice. And I think one thing that I found out a bit later was that the writer of 86 actually had some control in the production, so I think it gives a really nice aspect that I will talk about this later, but it gives a nice aspect of the show, even if you like even if you don't pay attention in the overall story. So first things first, I think I need to give you a little bit of the overall situation in the first half of the anime. But in terms of world building, it is a very simple premise. So we have like the Empire of Giat, and that empire was waging war against almost all of their neighbors, but they were losing. So I think in a last ditch, or they were trying to like innovate in a new technology to win the war, they created the Legion, and the Legion is a fully autonomous robots or mechas, but I think something went wrong. I don't remember specifically what went wrong, but I know that they turned against the Empire and they tried to consume everything. So the first nation to fall was the Empire of Giat, but when I think the most resources were depleted in the Empire, they suddenly turned to other nations. So, with that little bit of context, we follow in the perspective of the Sun Mongoliana Republic. This nation, following the invasion of the Legion, did something very extreme to survive. They took their minority population, that does not have white hair, and put them on mechas and told them to fight in the front lines. And this is bad, but things get even worse when I think they tell the other half of the majority population that they created their own autonomous robots, and they would win in about a year or in 2 years, so nothing to worry about. With that said, we follow in the first half of the anime, especially I think most of the time we'll follow the perspective of Commander Melis, or what we'll call her later on Handler 1. So at first she seems like a very strict character, but she's a very loving heart, and she really not enjoys, but she really empathizes with the soldiers that she leads. So the soldiers with tell her what's really happening, and they tell him that the Legion is getting stronger every day, and this war will not be over in a year. And I think in a year they would be overwhelmed, and San Mongoliana will fall. But when she tried to bring it up to her superior, she, the superior like demotes her for insubordination and puts her to manage the worst squadron, and that is Spearhead. So although we have a lot of characters at first, don't expect most of them to survive, so just focus on the main ones. So at first we have Shin, he's the leader of the squad, and he's the most experienced, he's a very cold character, and he can sort of like sense the Legion, so he knows when they are coming. And then we have the other two female supports. One of them is Kureha, and she's a very kind of cheerful girl, and she feels like a Imoto, a younger sister type of character. And the other is quite the opposite. The character is Angel, and Angel feels more like a older sister type of deal, more ornate, more caring about others. But other than that, we have the two male supports. One of them is Theo Hotel, and he's a little bit like a brat at first. I'm not gonna lie, I didn't like him at first, and he doesn't seem like worry about anything, doesn't care about anyone. But we get his side later on the series. And then we have Raiden, and he gives a lot of older brother like type of energy. So he's one of the only that talks equal to equal, like touch to Shin. And out of the main couple that is Shin and Handler 1, I think he's my favorite character in the overall show. So one thing that I really like is that how every fight gives a sense of tension. And one trap that most anime in the mecha genre fall is that fighting becomes trivial, every mission becomes trivial because we know the characters will return. And this does not happen in this anime. So every fight there's a chance that someone's gonna to die, and if they don't die or they get fatally injured, Shin, and that is he's the commander, so he must go there and shoot or destroy the bodies of his comrades, because like the Legion, after every battle they try to recycle as much as they can, and in the meantime I think they like absorb the minds of the people that fall and put them, like they recycle their minds, so it's a very fucked up thing to do. So they don't get the conclusion, they don't get a memorial, or they are not even remembered. So Shin, like he carves their names into a scrap of their mechas and put them in a little box, and that box becomes sort of like their memorial. And this pair with the happy moments in between, it is a very powerful combat. Like alongside this, we see that after every battle they don't have enough ammo, they don't have enough fuel, and the situation just gets like the situation just gets worse and worse after every fight, and characters continue to die left and right until we just have the main cast. One of the highlights is the last episode, and the pace is especially good in the last episode because since they to commemorate their victory, Melis sort of like males then fireworks, and they have like a firework party, but it cuts in between to the fighting scenes, and we see the characters getting shelled and getting torn into pieces, and they just cut back to them smiling. And I think it is just like a bittersweet thing that this show does. And another thing, it was the timeless of Fido, showing like the everyday lives in the camp, really makes you care about the other characters that we don't see or they have died. And alongside that, we have the last confrontation between Shin and his older brother. And I don't think it is messed up, but it gives like a sort of conclusion to Shin's objective, since we see like the distorted voice of his brother and Shin just like pulling the trigger. I would say it was absolute cinema, because it's like putting a it's like killing something that you really care about, but you have to kill it. So I think the last episode is the highlight of the first half. I will not say the first half was bad, but the last episode was absolute cinema, and it was really good. So for the second part, I really enjoyed how they expand the world building. Like we see a reform in Giat, so they are now not the Empire of Giat, they are the Federation of Giat. And we see two other nations that have survived and are still trying to fight against the Legion. But there are two things that I dislike about the second half. One thing is that we don't see what happened to Melis after the last battle, after Shin and the Spearhead Squadron cut communication and go their own way. I think we just see her perspective in the last 2 episodes or 3 episodes of the second part, and I don't think it was a missed opportunity, because I understand I understand the director why he did that, but I really appreciate it if we could see her a little bit more. And another thing is the character that is introduced in the second part, and that is Frederica. In my opinion, she is one of the most annoying characters that I have ever seen, and she just feels like a plot device to make us empathize with the antagonist of the second part, because the antagonist is like her former knight and she has some sort of connection, and the knight is doing this because he has to avenge her, because he thinks that she's dead, but she is not actually dead. Now, if you are comparing part 1 and part 2, we will see a little bit of cool down in the fighting scenes. We don't see a lot of action I think in the most part of the second half, and we actually see the characters like the Spearhead Squadron returning to sort of normalcy, to their normal life. But we also see that they can, I think it's not that they don't want, it's that they can't integrate with civilian life, especially Shin, because in my opinion his whole arc is sort of like over at that point. But it's not just Shin, the whole squad gives like a veteran coming home kind of deal, kind of vibe. Another thing is that since the whole Spearhead Squadron is veteran defeating the Legion, we see that the cycle kind of repeats itself, because they are now, I think, they are brought back to fight against the Legion again, and the cycle kind of repeats itself. Like when we met the character Eugene, he's like a San Mongliana refugee, and I would tell this is a kind of spoiler, he dies, I think, a couple episodes later, and Shin has to finish him off, shooting his head. But right before that, we see that he had a younger sister, and I think, I don't know, Eugene is kind of like a secondary character, but even that, it really gives a sad feeling. I don't know, it hit with right in the feels of the experience. So another thing that I find interesting about the last battle is where one by one the Spearhead Squadron, like, they give their last stand to give Shin the time to finish the huge artillery battle that is controlled by the former knight, Federica's former knight. And like, this is why I tell you that she's kind of like a plot point, is because she, like, in the last battle, she sort of like show herself to the former knight, and he like have a little breakdown, mental breakdown, and in that moment it gives Shin the chance to finish him off. So that's why I think Federica is a plot device, and it could have done better, but I don't know. I think it's just my biases because I really didn't like her character throughout the second half. So for the finale, I think in a narrative standpoint, it was a especially nice way to end the anime. It's like it was the cherry on top in a narrative standpoint, because they finished the arc and they also give a little room to expand in the future. Like in the world building sense, we saw other nations that they fight in the last battle, like the Royal Gracia Kingdom and the World Alliance. And another thing, in the antagonist side, in the Legion side, we see a voice, and he sort of seems like he's superior to the Federica's Knight, and he was talking to Federica's Knight right before the battle and was kind of like a reporting what happened in the battle. So I think that is really interesting, because they in a continuation point, it really makes sense, because we see the humans can integrate with the Legion. We see Shin's brother doing that and Federica's Knight, but this mysterious voice, he's like kind of superior, like a someone with a very high rank in the Legion's command chain. So I really want they to expand on that. I think the best moment by far of the anime was the reunion between Melis, or Handler 1, with the Spearhead Squadron. Seeing them talk to each other face to face was beautiful in a way that it really gives closure, for me at least, in a sense that they did not die somewhere not knowing who they were. Like, Melis did not die anywhere not knowing what the Spearhead Squadron looked like or what they did after that. And Shin and the whole Spearhead Squadron did not die not knowing who were giving them orders or who sent them the fireworks at the end of part 1. And seeing them talk face to face, it really gives closure in a sense that in a way that I can't describe it. It was just beautiful. And talking about closure, we sort of have a closure with the other members that died fighting the Spearhead Squadron. And that closure was, I think, when Shin placed the little box that have their names of the fallen comrades that fell in part 1 or fell in like along the way, placed in the memorial that the Giad Federation made for them. Because even though the Giad Federation had like a strange history with some Mongolian Republic, they respected that they fall like soldiers, like heroes. And this is a really good callback to the scene where the other members, like, they hold their heads asking Shin to save them. And we know that Shin did not save them physically, but I think in a metaphorical way, Shin saved them from not being forgotten. Because if we follow the same track that some Mongolian Republic was doing with them, they would be like scrap. They would be like scrap or corpses in a battlefield that nobody would remember. But at least in some sort of way, they were given a burial, and now they're like living in peace, knowing that at least some people will remember them and will remember the sacrifice that they made against the Legion. But with all that said, thank you for watching this, I think, long video, and this is just my opinion. So leave your opinion about the anime 86 in the comments, and bye bye.